You're watching Inside Utah Politics.
Time now to debate some of the big stories of the week with the Inside Utah Politics panel. This week we have former State Senator Jim DeBackus and former House Speaker Greg Hughes. Gentlemen, great to have you back on the show. Thanks for being here.
Great to be here.
Let's get into the election. It's not just Tuesday night anymore. It just goes on and on and on, it seems. But let's get specifically into the race for the White House. President Trump continuing at this moment to say that the election was rigged, that he won. I want to get into these fraud claims. Jim, let's start with you. What do you make of them?
Look, it turns out President-elect Biden is going to win just as many electoral votes as Donald Trump. In Michigan, Biden is ahead by 150,000 votes, and the president is still there with a lawyer. Sean Reyes is traveling around the country. Look, it's over. And why does it matter to Utahns? It matters. We're getting overwhelming new cases of the virus. People are dying. We need leadership. We need the task force. We need the transition. Let's start the transition. And you know what? If Trump wins, oh well, then we won't have a transition anymore. But we need every single one of these 71 days that are left. And to play these games is irresponsible. And it sums up the whole selfishness of Donald Trump.
All right, you bring up if Trump wins. I want to dig more into that a little bit later, like how it would even be possible. But first, Greg, let's bring you in. These claims of fraud, you are an ardent Trump supporter.
I am.
What do you make when you see the president saying to everyone across the country, I won this election and it's being taken away from me?
So here's the challenge we have, and this was called by a lot of people before. I think Jim and I, we spoke about the worry that on either Biden or Trump winning on election night, people going to sleep on that election night, and then whatever that gap was in the coming days and weeks, that gap would be overcome and you'd have a different winner than you had on election night, and what the perception at least of a problem like that would create. Here's the problem with mail-in voting, and I'm just going to, and I think this is at the heart of what we're talking about. It does not have the chain of custody that going in person, providing your identification, having an election judge look at your name on the voter rolls, you signing the sheet, and then voting. Vote by mail inherently doesn't have those processes. What it does have is a way to look at your signature when you mail in your ballot, and there is a commitment to complete transparency. When transparency and those safeguards are broken down, or there are at least even accusations and images that we're seeing, the American people are seeing, of where that transparency and those safeguards are not being practiced, that is where the perception, minimally the perception of something wrong happening starts to be felt. And look, in this election, we were told this was going to be a blue wave, a landslide. There was no one who thought that they would ever support this president. At least 6 million more people supported him in 20 than in 16. Both candidates have received more votes by the American people than any candidate before them. And that's something to pay attention to. And if anyone thought that Trump had got his election by Russia interference, I think that's been proven wrong. They censored social media, even from Americans, for that. I think you have a divided nation. Perception on free and open elections have to be clear. And I do think that there are issues out there that need to be resolved to the satisfaction of the American people.
Okay, you make a good point there, and that was that there was no blue wave, and I want to get back to that a little bit later. But first, perception and proof. A big ally of the president, former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, also on ABC News nationally, says, look, if this is happening, show us the proof. So far, we haven't seen that. Jim?
One person sent in a ballot for their dead mother. Another one, somebody saw somebody do this. That's not how we run the United States of America. Hillary Clinton was on the phone saying, you were elected. Talk about a bitter campaign. This is about dignity and respect for the process. And Donald Trump doesn't care about anything but himself. That's what he cares about. Are you telling me,
Jim,
Greg?
You just did what
Donald Trump can win?
You cannot compare.
Can win in any way, shape, or form to stop the transition.
Hillary Clinton complained that election was stolen from her for the entire 4 years of Trump's presidency.
She had the decency to call in.
She did call and concede, but still to this day, gentlemen, she still says he's an illegitimate president.
Yes, and what do we think this Russian investigation that just dogged this president for how long? That's not this. that was a subject.
Can Donald
that he
Trump
colluded with the
win the
Russians to steal the
election?
election. It was all about the election results.
Greg, real quick, I do want to get your take on this, though.
Yeah.
What I said with Chris Christie says, show us the proof.
Yeah,
we haven't seen it at this
Glenn,
point.
that's what these court cases are about. They have to show to a judge where they believe wrongdoing has happened, where they think that this transparency or safeguards were illegally violated, not provided. And even if you get to that spot where you can show that the transparency is not there and the safeguards were ignored, you would still have a very hard time if those votes are blended with the general populace of votes, because you don't have signatures on the ballots themselves, just on the envelopes. Once they've been put into the general population of votes, I think it's hard to show what votes you would pull out, even if they followed the process wrong. I will say this, though. This election is so important that having the safeguards violated, having transparency not be provided, especially in states like Jim, on 15,000 votes in Wisconsin. If people were upset that Hillary lost Pennsylvania by 44,000 votes, you're looking at a number that would be smaller than that in Pennsylvania now.
Okay.
So let's just make sure we have a process that everyone can say, hey, we lost fair and square.
The process
we
is
won fair and
fine.
square.
I want to get to another point we just made, though, a little bit earlier, and that was there was no blue wave. In the very state of Wisconsin, which you bring up, Greg, Republicans took 5 of 8 congressional seats. We saw that across the country. They gained seats in the House. They've only lost 1 so far in the Senate. So if this was all about stealing the election, why did it stop short at the Senate and the House?
We have the worst cheaters in history.
Overall, outside of the presidency, you would have to call that a pretty good night for Republicans.
So what you've pointed out begs the question. There's an incredible amount, or we were told at least, of just we voted for the presidential race and we left the down ticket empty. How many of those ballots are there, and how how much of an outlier are the number of votes where they're saying they just voted for Biden and the rest of the ticket was left empty? You're seeing things like that. And what I just want to say is this. It is a two-way street. You had the whole Russian investigation was about Russia's involvement.
What does the Russian investigation have to do with the election we just finished, Greg?
It was about them. It was about manipulating the outcomes of this election.
This man is illegitimate, and in a deranged
we
night,
have forgotten that the
he
Russian
said, "I won the election."
was about the election. The Russian collusion was about the election and them manipulating the outcome of the Hillary Clinton Donald Trump election.
Biggest whiner.
All I'm saying is this: you have got to let them run the legal course. If it is the case that there isn't a legal leg to stand on, the courts are not going to accept these lawsuits. Let that legal process go forward. And that's what you have to do. You did it for Gore in 2000. Do it now. Let the courts run their course.
Jim, do you have a problem with the courts taking it up and taking a look and the president
they've
taking
taken it
advantage
up.
of?
There have been 11 cases brought to judges, and 11 times it said no. My point is, have the head of the General Services Administration sign the documents, let Biden, his team, his coronavirus people begin the transition, because they're going to be taking charge. And every day that we lose now is going to be lives right here in Utah, while the president bitches and complains and moans the way he has done for 4 long years. He can't take responsibility.
In these narrowly won states, if you just flipped the script and said it was Trump that had won and Biden who had narrowly lost these battleground states, it would be a clarion call to allow for the irregularities that are being asserted to go through the courts and be determined once and for all if
Greg,
they can be.
Greg, what's the likelihood of any of them being reversed on either a recount or through the courts? It's not something we've seen historically.
And this is what's sad. I don't think the media, I don't think us sitting here, I don't think we're privy to the merit of those cases as a judge, and that process is going to be let that move forward. What I worry about is everyone's in such a great hurry. You know, they called, you had people calling at 11 p.m. on election night, Arizona, when to this day they're still counting, and it is less than 1% between the Trump and Biden. My point is this: don't be in such a hurry. Don't condition the public through media narratives that he's already won, and then with the fate of maybe having to pull that back. Let these court cases run their course. If they're meritless, they get dismissed. We can move on.
Real quick, Jim, your final word on
those mail-in ballots. We know they're nefarious and they're manipulated, and I expect Spencer Cox to resign his shot at being the governor. Give me a break.
Me just say this.
This is all made up.
Let me just say this.
Donald Trump lost, and you just can't take it, Greg.
We learned
just
the late
admit
Joe
it.
Frazier voted. Okay, I'm going to draw a bright line on the side right now. I believe in ghosts, Jim, but I do not believe that ghosts have the right to vote. I think if you are dead, the ghosts have to stay out of our election, okay?
Show me a ghost.
And the reason why you know that
Gentlemen, we have 1 minute left. I'm going to give each of you 30 seconds.
I'm smiling.
30 seconds each. I want to get into these new state of emergency mandates in the state of Utah. Your take on them. 30 seconds each. Jim.
It's heavy-handed. Oh, you said Jim, but
well,
I just want to jump in. Let me just say, give Jim the last word. Here's what I'm going to say. The counsel, the encouragement, the good information driving good decisions of how we should be separated from one another, what we should be doing right now to curb the hospitalizations and emergency room visits, absolutely critical. I think in good information. Okay. To then come up and say we're going to give you fines and we're going to come after you criminally, we're going to do all these things, way too heavy-handed in the land of the free, home of the brave.
To give Jim the last word on that.
We tried. Herbert tried. Persuasion and whatever. We had 3,000 new cases, and it's a formula, and it's going to get worse. Are you kidding me? Not making mandatory masks is criminal in the state of Utah, and the politicians should be locked up.
They are mandatory across the state.
I know now, but we went how long? We went until it was out of control.
That was an excellent conversation. I need to have you back on more often. Thanks for being here.
We'll do it.
We'll do it again.
Stay with us. We'll be right back with more Inside Utah Politics right after the break.